You are watching WPTV.
At one time, The Walking Dead was the talk of cable TV. Before Thrones, before Breaking Bad was big, it was The Walking Dead. Jeremy is here to talk about his love of the series in the form of the video games with The Walking Dead story. So, Jeremy, I mean, right off the top, what sets the difference between the video games, the comics, the TV shows? I mean, there's a lot of Walking Dead stuff. Why just the game series?
Okay, so first off, I can say we don't need this. We don't need this.
Oh,
Because
wow.
we're not talking about that. That's not what we're talking about today.
I just lost half my set.
Yep,
Now I'm lost.
Too bad. Because
Don't
you know
take
why?
Ezio away.
Because you know why? The comic books, they went to hell. The show, you see the state it's in. It's bad.
It's not great.
But those games, I'm telling you, man, without those games, I wouldn't have gotten as big as as a writer as I am. I wouldn't have gotten as big into me being as a storyteller as I am. It's insane what they did.
Well, I mean, let's talk about that. It's not a typical video game setup. This is not a game where you can just pick it up and kind of play it to completion. It's done in episodes, like all Telltale games are.
Yep.
It's done in episodes like it's a TV show. It's a playable TV show. It was the first one. What was the story and the characters like that got you to be a story writer yourself?
Okay, so my big one, the first character who I instantly fell in love with him is Lee. Lee Everett.
I mean, this
guy is
this former prisoner.
Yes, he is a former prisoner. He's a former professor at I think the University of Georgia.
Mm-hmm.
He's someone who he's got this tragic backstory because his wife cheated on him with a state senator, and in a crime of passion, he killed him. Mm-hmm. And that's what sets him up for the beginning of this story. And you would think that someone like this, you wouldn't be able to connect with them. You fall in love with Lee almost as soon as you meet him because you can tell that he is remorseful. He hates himself for what he did. And you see that come to fruition when he meets Clementine, this little girl who he stumbles across, who's left alone in this world, who is grown up in this picture, but she was a little girl who didn't have a snowball's chance in hell at surviving without him.
Oh, yeah, she was. I mean, we meet her. She's trapped in her own house.
Her own treehouse.
Oh yeah, her own treehouse. Her own house is infested with zombies, or I think it was one or two. It's the first time you experienced them.
It's her babysitter that's a walker inside the house.
And so Lee becomes the father figure in their relationship. I mean, unfortunately, spoilers.
Spoilers for everyone.
Lee dies at the end of season 1 of the game.
Saving her.
Yeah, trying to save Clementine to finish that kind of arc, this redemption that he's a good character now. And then we move on to other characters. So season 2, he meets AJ.
Season 2, AJ is only a baby at the time because Clementine's with this whole other group. She meets up with them. They are some of the weakest characters in the series. Besides Kenny, who Kenny was in season 1. You lose him at episode 5, right before Lee sacrifices himself the final time. And Kenny starts out as he's that callback to season 1. But then you realize that this man is broken beyond belief. Look at him in this.
That is a beaten up dude. That's a beaten up man.
He lost his entire family. The girlfriend he found in the apocalypse, she dies. The only thing he has left is Clementine, and he becomes obsessive over her and the baby AJ. And the only one who sees through this is Jane, who Jane is, I kind of saw her as a throwaway character to be that kind of that other mentor figure towards Clementine, because she shows her how to fight.
Yeah.
Something that Lee shows her how to shoot, but she shows her how to fight. There's a difference there.
I mean, let's talk about a little bit. I mean, looking at these images, the art style in this game is so revolutionary in the way it's hand-drawn. I mean, this was obviously another thing for Telltale that they carried on to all their games, but it's all hand-drawn. So did that play a role in kind of its reception and perception with audiences, that it was almost like a living graphic novel, what the story started with?
I believe that's what really grabbed people because it was so different. Almost like Borderlands in a way, where Borderlands had this unique art style that made it timeless. Same thing with these games. I can go back and play season 1 anytime I want and just go through that story again, and it still holds up today because it's such a unique style that it gives you this feeling that you're playing through a graphic novel, like you said. You're not just playing a video game that's graphics are going to downgrade through time. It's because of the artistic choice, it preserves itself.
Yeah, it's always playable because it's always just a hand-drawn image.
Exactly.
So let's talk about a little bit the absolute last thing. It's reinvented kind of the way video games are played.
Yes, it
in this
has.
episodic, choices-driven, that you can see other people's choices. You know, not just in this game. In the beginning, you couldn't, but as we go towards other Telltale games, especially the Batman series, they show you statistics of your alignment with every other player who plays it. How big was Telltale itself for the gaming industry in its prime?
Let me say it like this: when Walking Dead came out in 2012, it surprisingly got nominated for Game of the Year by a lot of different places. And it won, especially the big one, back when it was called the Spike Video Games Awards. It won. It beat out Borderlands 2. That was the biggest game that year, and it still won because of what it did, of what the ripple effect became of that game. Storytelling in video games, I believe, shot up big time because people in the video game industry realized people will be drawn more to a character than to the gameplay or to whatever their arts, whatever their graphics are, because if there's no soul to it, then what are you doing? You're just running around in a game for 2 hours, 3 hours a day, and you're not really doing much. That's why when I play like multiplayer games like Fortnite and all those, I can't get into them because there's no soul to it.
Yeah, you don't care about anyone involved, and that's
Exactly.
the biggest issue. I think Telltale games really force you to care because you're that character in a larger sense of you're making every decision that they have.
Right.
And so I do want to ask you, I mean, recently in the past, well, season 4 even of this game did not get finished by Telltale. It got finished by Skybound.
Which was the parent company for all the Walking Dead stuff. That was learning about that and seeing its downfall, because I've been following Telltale for a long time, ever since The Walking Dead came out. I looked at its past, where its games were they were doing episodic games before this, but nothing caught on until The Walking Dead. And then after that, the only other game that really, really captured it, besides its sequel and the final season, was Wolf Among Us. But what happened with Telltale was they tried to take on too much at once. They had all these franchises coming to them and be like, hey, you want to do this for us? Sure, let's do it. But they just kept saying yes. And they overworked their employees to the point where they couldn't keep up anymore. And when they're in the middle of this final season, if they hadn't took on too many things and they were going into this, they'd still be a company right now.
Yeah, I mean, like, you think about the timeline that they were building these things. They were Walking Dead, Wolf Among Us,
Season 2,
Batman,
Yep,
Game of Thrones.
Yep.
You know, there's all these
Tales from the Borderlands.
Tales of the Borderlands, all these great Minecraft.
Yeah.
These franchises that were coming to them for these games. So do you think there's ever going to be a resurgence for these type of games now that we've seen Telltale drop off? They're no longer a company, unfortunately. Do you see another developer coming along and maybe making that change again for the gaming industry?
Don't Nod was one of those that created Life is Strange, and they're on their second season of the game right now, which they did an episodic game. They've been doing episodic games as well, but it revolves around superheroes and everything, like people with superpowers and things. And yeah, it does have that Telltale feel. It's a Walking Dead like many people like to call episodic games that have choice. But I think what really people are going to take from this is building characters and building a story rather than making it episodic, because if you do that, you run into a situation with Wrath of Azura, where they had that DLC ending, which was incredibly dumb. Like, you don't want to do that, but at the same time, when you're doing the episodic nature of it, you're completing one game and then saying, like, okay, the story continues with the next game, and you're promising that, and it's a guarantee. And that's where, if games are going to start picking up on that, that's where they should pick up on, not blocking it with DLC.
So the character-driven narrative, not exactly the play style.
Yes.
Well, unfortunately, Jeremy, that's all the time we have, and I want to thank you so much for sticking around with us. But don't go anywhere, because Jeremy's not going anywhere, and neither should you, because we are right back here with Press Start Trivia next.